to this penultimate class, public class of the year, that is. I just said that to the roomers. Let's start by standing up. What I call Kayotsaga, as it's one of the poses that in Jainism they use to attain Kevala, this enlightenment in that tradition. Arms are down, feet are alive, breath is through the nose if possible. We're tuning out and tuning in simultaneously. So movement often helps with that. Now tuning into the so-called body, but the body is actually a matrix. Quite early to say that, isn't it? But the body is a matrix of body, brain, and breath. Wiggle the fingers and raise the arms. Continue to raise as you tone the tummy, you draw the tummy in. And you might be able to discover and find an energetic frequency or signature at the pelvic floor that you can use to feel like you're nudging energy into the central channel. So the tendency that I feel anyways, for the energy or consciousness or awareness to fall out of the central channel and become distracted by the multiplicity, by prakriti, by the scene. But if you nudge just to keep the energy in the pelvic, in the central channel, through the pelvic floor, that also keeps attention in the middle, in the non-duality, the non-dual center. Take a big wide circle. Hands to heart. I'm not expecting you to jump. I think I'm going to. You can step or jump. Oh, some of you did. Breathing through the nose. Left toes in. Right foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot, finishing off the turn on the heel. Spread out the little toe side of your back foot repeatedly with the intention to enter into the arms of the goddess, which is the mother matrix, which is the body, is one portal through to that mother matrix, because everything is it. Inhale, raise your inner groin, breathe through your nose, jaw soft. If you're anticipating Trikonasana, I'm afraid it's not coming. It's just a sense of this moment. It's a sort of deliberate derailment, because most of us, all of us, will probably have a pattern for Trikonasana. And then it feels like we can't just follow the pattern, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve in yoga, is patternlessness. Okay, well done. Arm down, turn, back toes, front foot and leg on the ball of the foot. Finish off the turn on the heel. And similarly, just going to adjust my microphone. Adjust yours too if it's in the way. And raise your arm, again from the inner groin of the back leg. So it takes concentration and breath, because we have to enter into the mother matrix, madrika. And you can return to the mother via any of her babies, and everything's her babies, including the so-called body. And I call it a so-called body because the reality of the body is it's also the breath, it's also the mind, it's also sociology, it's also psychology, and so on. So focus on breathing and making space, those two things. Breathing and making space. Wunderbar. Okay, arm down, feet forwards, hands to the hips. Let's go diagonal. Let's take the right foot forwards towards the front of the mat, towards this side of the room, and the left foot backwards. Make sure that the back toes don't turn out. They don't have to turn in for this, however. We're going to bend and retract the knee a few times to help us bring more fibers around with us. A part of this process is releasing through the back leg, following a little arc with the knee. And really, it's very useful to just discover resistance, tight muscles or mental tensions or whatever the resistance, whatever form it takes. And asking the resistance, what do you need to come round? So lifting the heel, taking more time. What do you need for the holism that we're looking for? Eventually, it may be a while, but eventually we'll get the knee to be bent with this holistic feel. We're going to bring the elbow down and the arm up and over. This is Pajavakonasana, which is already open between the front hips, so the inguinal ligament is already open. We can turn and look up if we want. It makes it a little bit more exciting. Breathe easy. Sometimes, it depends on the length of your arm, I guess, but it's nice to place your fingers on your belly, your lower belly, if it feels natural, spontaneous to do that. And as I say, that might depend on the length of your forearm. Arm down, palm down, push into the leg calmly. Come up. Well done, everyone. One back, one forwards. In step of the foot, parallel to the front of the mat. Taking some deeper breaths at this point, probably started. Hopefully that started. And then tracking round this arc with a view to holism. Intention matters. So we want to bring everything round with us. There's a sense in which there's an opening in two directions. The legs are opening, as it were, away from each other. And there's a sense in which we want to bring everything round. So anything that helps with that, lifting your toes, lifting your heel, taking more time, more repetitions. And of course, we're practicing this beautiful honesty in Yoga Satya. Again, if the time comes that you feel integrated, and that doesn't mean that you might still make adjustments, you may well make further adjustments, then the elbow down, arm up. It can stay up or it can stay down. It doesn't have to go up, by the way. And perhaps up and over if that's appropriate. Jaw soft, eyes soft, throat soft, brain soft. Listening and responding. Sorry, I'm going to take the and away. Listening, responding. One thing, two aspects of one thing. Listening and responding sounds like they occur sequentially, but they don't, or chronologically, but they don't. They're simultaneous. Very good. Arm down, palm down. Push, come up on the inhale. Walk your feet towards each other and bring them together for Tadasana. Feet either touching or close, depending on your dimensions, the shape of your legs, the angle of your hips, these kinds of things, the shape of your feet. So we don't have to have the feet touching, but if they do touch, fine. If they don't touch, just make sure they're level. Breathe through your nose, drop the shoulders, soften the eyes, and enjoy this reabsorption into the mother field. So the mother field is what it sounds like. It's not actually very complicated. It's called the mother field because everything that is manifest is birthed from it constantly. You know, the Buddha was very, very clear in telling people to watch the arising, the sustaining, the disappearing of every sensation. In other words, tuning them into the field. He called it praticca samutpada, but that's too much of a mouthful. We'll call it the mother field. When you're ready, raise up your right heel and feel into your left foot. Breathe through your nose. Feel into your left foot. Particularly sense, if you can, the three arches, particularly the medial, the inner arch, which I think most people are familiar with. There's a corresponding lateral arch on the little toe side, which you can feel through movement. You can sort of wake it up. And there's a transverse arch across the foot towards the front. When those arches are online, it really helps everything else to release. And then you might experiment with raising your leg up. It can go to the inner ankle, it can cup the knee, or it can come right up to the top of the thigh. The hands can be either in prayer position, which is a good starting point, or we can imitate the Danda Swamis, as is postulated that there's a Greek bastardization of what is thought is probably Sanskrit Danda Swami from the a testament from the men of Alexander the Great. Anyway, Danda Swamis held a stick. That's the Danda part. So you can hold a stick if you want. And they apparently raised it up above their head. So you might raise it a bit, or a bit more, or a bit more. I don't think they really cared how far they raised it. No one was sort of judging them, or no one had invented the camera at that point. So there were no Instagrams. So the point is, the focus, the abstaining from karmic actions. If you raised a stick up, bring it down. Otherwise, just bring your foot down. Take a deep breath or two. Shake out, shake out, shake out. Any way that you want to or feel is sort of nice, natural. And feel into the foot arches of your other foot. So raise your other heel and moving backwards and forwards until you can feel, you're getting out of your head, which implies that our experience is fractured. Like there's the head thinking about things and the body's doing whatever it's doing. And we can do that. And we do that often. When we do our jobs, we often have to fracture our heads from our bodies because our bodies are often saying, stop sitting at that desk, but we have to ignore them. Or whatever job you have. Maybe it's not a desk job. Anyway, when you're ready, the leg goes up to one of those points, cupping the knee or on the inner ankle. The hands coming to a prayer position, which is a great place to begin and also to be. Breathing through your nose. There's the option to do the Danda Swami thing, which is to hold your mock stick and raise it to whatever height you want, whatever feels appropriate. And remember, a big part of why the Danda Swamis practiced what they practiced was the abstention from what otherwise would inevitably be habituated action. So this is the important tapas, the important discipline that actually sets us free from compulsion, from following habits that we didn't even choose. We call them my preferences, but they're not my preferences. They're our parents, our societies, our very, very particular and fairly random life story so far. So it's not mine. It's sort of co-created by everything impersonally. It's impersonal. Really good. Okay, if you raised a danda, bring it down. And anyway, we'll bring the feet down. Another shake out, 2 or 3 or 4 deep breaths. Feet back together or towards each other. Raise up your left heel. Feel into your right foot. And when you start to feel those arches come alive, for me, it takes a while because it's the whole leg that has to come alive. All the tissues have to start talking to each other. And they're talking to psyche and the breath as well. Then we raise the leg and take hold of the big toe. So this is pada angushta. So pada plus angushta means pada is foot, angushta is thumb. So you're holding the thumb of your foot. And then all we're going to do is lift the leg up and out. You can counterbalance with the other arm if you find that useful. You'll notice I'm looking at the floor ahead of me to help with my balance. Okay, groovy. Coming back, taking a deep breath. Jaw soft. Really nice here at the Buddhist Center. We can hear our first birds singing. You only hear birds in the middle of town if you're this early, before the seagulls kind of properly wake up and do whatever seagulls do, bully everyone. God bless them. They are pretty though, pretty eyes. Raise up and reach down. Take hold of your big toe. Breathe through your nose. You can have your hand on your hip or use it as a balance. Repetition. It's good practice of kshanti. That is patience or forbearance, it's sometimes called. Pull the leg up and out if you're ready. Breathe through your nose if you can. These poses are great because if you can't hold your big toe for any reason, you can put your foot on a chair or on some blocks or on a chest with some blocks on it, whatever you've got to hand. If it's difficult for your arms for some reason. Okay, release, return, breathe, shake out. Let's take our feet really wide. Well done, everyone. It's early for this kind of malarkey, isn't it? Oh, me too. Me too. That's a good sign. I think you're detoxing. Not to say that you were toxic in the first place, but sometimes we are just through life and the society we live in. Toes are turned out as much as we can without falling over. Okay? And then we're going to bend down lower. And for me, if I go lower, I can turn my toes out a little bit more. Obviously, don't turn them out too much at home. I'm not there to help you if you fall. And then we're going to do the crab looking for its contact lenses. It makes me think it's a crab just because of this sort of crab looking for its... You probably didn't know crabs wore contact lenses. They don't need them for their eyesight. They just like to change up the color of their eyes sometimes. And you're reaching for the floor. I quite like to lift my toes up when I get my fingertips to the floor. It can take time. Obviously, there's a lot of tissue involved, the pelvic floor, the muscles around the tailbone, the adductors and so on. So lifting the toes can be something that could help. And then coming back up, and Sally Kempton, who's now not with us anymore, used to call this the goddess pose, I think. It was something like this. And she probably stuck our tongue out to make her look like Kali, which is also something that we do in Hatha Yoga. But we're not going to do it today. It's too early. Inhale, come up, turn the feet forwards, hands on the hips. Take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 deep breaths. Who's that Trikonasana you so wanted to do earlier? Back toes in, front foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot, heel to arch, raise the arms, lift the chest, inhale, exhale. And there's that hamstring stretch that we breathe into. So it's a rich, a moment-to-moment rich experience. And there's a responsiveness that's like a surfer on a wave. So the reason surfers love surfing so much is not because they like getting cold and wet. It's not because they like being pummeled under the water particularly, but it's because when they ride a wave for the few seconds usually that they can, there's a harmony with body, brain, breath, and universe. Nothing is separate. They've returned to the source. They might not use those phrases, they might. Perhaps if they're Patrick Swayze in Point Break, they might use those phrases. Inhale, come on up. Beautiful, Patrick. Hands on the hips, feet facing forwards, deep breaths. Eyes soft. So deep breath's really important, isn't it? Really letting it happen. I compare it to a wooden spoon stirring your energy body. So if there are any lumps, like porridge, can get lumps in it, stir those lumps out. What are those lumps? Those grunties are areas of neurotic fixation or habitual fixation, I could say more generously. Back toes in, front foot and leg out. Stretch the arms, breathe through your nose, lightly tone the tummy, take deeper breaths, inhale, exhale, Utthita Trikonasana. Beautiful. Thoroughly enjoying yourself is permitted, but not compulsive. Sometimes you just find yourself thoroughly enjoying listening, responding modality, which is beyond the mind, unmani, beyond the sort of thinking about things. It's an intelligence beyond thinking. Again, the top arm can be up, but it doesn't have to be. Can be on the hip, can be round, holding the thigh. That's quite nice variation. It's actually Tim Tarrant's favorite. So these are all options. Inhaling, coming up, well down, hands on the hips, feet face forwards. Let's locate the hip joints with a sassy little side-to-side shimmy. I know it's a bit early for this sort of thing, but a little sassy shimmy, and you'll be able to feel your hips articulating below where you would put your hands on your hips. If you put your hands on your hips, it's here, but the movement of articulation is lower. So the hands on the hips is here, but the movement is lower here. And we're going to turn the back toes in. Oh, sorry, no, we're not. I lied. We're going to raise the arms up. Lightly tone the tummy. Breathe through the nose. Find the pelvic floor until you feel, I hope you begin to get this feeling of kind of just nudging and keeping the energy in the central channel. Basically, if it comes out of the central channel, it goes around the sort of habituated patterns, that you could call them the karmic patterns. But if it stays in the central channel, it stays in this middle point. You could call it pure consciousness, you could call it Shakti, you could even call it Shiva if you wanted to. Not that we should in the Buddhist center. We don't want the Buddhists knowing we're using the word Shiva so near the shrine. Anyway, back toes in, front foot out. Walk your front foot further across the width of the mat and breathe easy. In fact, of course, I'm joking about Buddhists. They don't mind at all, because even Padmasambhava, who's on the over to my behind me there, has the Trishula directly taken from Shiva. There's a great amount of respectful exchange between the traditions. Light tone of the tummy, lifting up from the inner groin. Make sure your head's in line with the spine. Inhale, stretch up. Exhale, bend your front knee. Play your way into it. So that might be forwards, backwards movement. Investigative. I think a lot of its focus should be focused on the inner groin of the back leg, on moving round from the inner groin and up from the inner groin of the back leg, through repetition, through movement. But further than just moving round and up, giving to a release upwardly, a release of that muscular stretch in the psoas. And of course, there's repetition, investigation, and breath. Inhale with the pelvic floor in your awareness, turn back to the front of the room where I am, and hands on the hips. Take a deep breath in, followed by out, find the pelvic floor. So if there's a degree of honesty when you're finding the pelvic floor, it makes a difference. Raise the arms, turn the palms, raise up. From the hip joints, tone your tummy. Back toes in, front foot and leg out, whole body's turning around. Once you've turned around, walk your front foot further across the width of the mat. And lift the back heel up. Turn it out before bringing it down again. Again, let's focus not just on the inner groin, but quite a bit of our attention can be on that at the beginning, on that inner groin of the back leg. Coming round with us. So from the very top of the inner thigh, across the pubis, perhaps you can feel there's a sort of resistance to moving backwards, which comes from that area and further up as well in the deep abdomen. And we want to lift and stretch and turn repeatedly, but more than that, we want to give. We want to give. We do that always through the breath. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, bend your knee, front knee. Play with it any way that works. Sometimes I lift my back heel. Sometimes I lift my front heel. Sometimes I lift the whole of the back foot except the ball of the foot on the big toe side for moments at a time to work more fibers round, more fibers in. So this, of course, is Virabhadra. It's Virabhadra or Virabhadrasana. Number 1, Eka or Ekam. Inhale with the pelvic floor in your awareness to come up and then turn back around, hands on the hips. Take a deep breath or 2. We're going to come forwards into a forward fold. So you might need a couple of blocks for that, Prasarita Padottanasana, because we want to keep the body open from here to here. We don't want to fold over the belly at all. So if you're not sure if you need blocks or not, it's easier to get rid of equipment during a pose than it is to attain it. And those blocks can be positioned, obviously, in various heights. You can have them like this. To start with, again, if you're not sure, you can always lower them. Toes turn in, little toes spread. Breathe through your nose. Repetition, abhyasa. Repetition for the little toes. So you lift your toes, you spread your toes. And you know, that repetition is the practice. We're repeatedly coming back to holism. And what's lovely is that Patanjali makes it very clear. It's completely overt that as we practice yoga, we should be relaxed. So let's just have a moment to remember what that word relaxed points to as an experience in the present. As we follow the instructions to spread out the little toes, don't give up on the little toes. You know, it's very easy to think, well, they're clearly operated by someone else, not me. They don't have the same amount of muscular connection as the other toes. It's true. It's anatomically true. But repetition and calmness can work wonders. Inhale, lift up from your groins. Exhale, hinge from the hip joints. Down you come to your blocks. We want the spine to be open from pubis, through tummy, through chest. Some people find it useful to lift the heels. I do. Or to lift the balls of the feet. I do. Or to do both, one foot at a time. But repetition, it's just like fine tuning is all that it is. Like if you had a radio dial and you swept the radio dial one way and then you sweep it the other way and you suddenly hear the signal of the radio station. Let's call it Radio 4 for now. Other radio stations are available. Or FIP, that's a good one, isn't it? FIP. And as we sweep, we then, the movements of the dial get smaller and smaller as we get a more and crisp and clear signal. So that crisp, clear signal, I used to call it radio yoga. So you're tuning into radio yoga, which means radio integration, doesn't it? If your lower back starts to dip through your repetition, because of course you're massaging myofascia through movements such as the ones I've mentioned. If your lower back starts to dip and it keeps dipping, then you go lower. Dipping means concaving towards the floor. So that's the criteria for going lower. It's not that getting your head closer to the floor makes you more yogic or something. Otherwise, ostriches would be the most yogic creatures on the planet. But instead, it's about responding, dancing with the moment, surfing the wave. So you can lower the height if that feels appropriate. Some people even lose the blocks. Some people keep them for their head. It's really not, how high or low you are to the floor has no relevance in terms of your yogic success. Only absorption has that relevance. Really good. Okay. Coming up the way you went down. So come up to the highest point you can on your bricks, up onto your fingertips even. Walk your feet a little closer. Lead with your chest and come up. Well done, everybody. Walk your feet towards each other and then come down to hands and knees, if you please, whenever you're ready. And while you're doing that, I'll take the opportunity to sip some tea. Okay, hands and knees, breathing easy, wag your tail if you find that you can intimate Patanjali's twofold request for us as we practice yoga, which is to be relaxed, but also to focus on the infinite. Now, what is the infinite? It's the mother. It is infinite. All the texts that talk about Prakriti say that she has no beginning and no end. That's clear. She's constantly changing. She's codependent. Everything in her is codependent with everything else in her. There's nothing outside of her. No phenomena, that is to say. So as you move, focusing on the infinite means opening up to the various relationships between various parts of muscles and fascia and fascial chains, relationships between the hands and the hips, or the pelvis and the chest, or the soles of the feet and the front of the thighs. Just noticing these relationships. And then between attitude and the body. What attitudes are most conducive to reabsorption? When you're ready, take the foot that's furthest away from me, step it forwards into the place of the hand that's furthest away from me. Bring your fingertips to the floor, tuck under your back toes and begin to play as you lift and land your knee in ways that I hope you can feel stretch your groin, in ways that lead to absorption back into the arms of the mother. Hopefully you're receptive to that sort of way of putting it, mother. The field, the interdependent, the beyond thought, the tatparam, whatever you want to call it. Eventually, through lots of play, which of course hydrates the myofascia and brings fluidity that then is echoed or mirrored in the mind, not echoed, mirrored. And come straight up onto your leg when you're ready. If your back knee is uncomfortable, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you focus on the stretch of the inner groin on the back leg, focus on that stretch, and then imagine that inner groin stretch is releasing upwards, and follow that through with your arms. And really keep coming back to that upward release. Again and again, the upward release from the inner groin, which is a psychophysical. Has to be. For it to be anything, it has to be everything. Psychophysical release. Okay, coming forwards. Back to hands and knees. There's your opportunity to take a deep breath. There's your opportunity to wag your tail in whatever way that your Chinese sign wags its tail, or try someone else's Chinese sign's tail on. If you've ever fancied swishing the beautiful tiger's tail and you're not a tiger, you could try that. But if you are a tiger, you could try this swishy horse tail. Kind of interesting to kind of play with that movement and the way that the body and the mind relate. When you're ready, the other foot comes into the place of the other hand. Again, you tuck under the toes, you lift your back knee, move between backwards and forwards motions. And again, in this way, we're massaging various fascial areas, not just myofascia, but meningeal fascia around the nerves, superficial fascia near the skin that holds the fat cells and helps to release heat into the body. Heat is often stored in the fat cells and also mitigated between inside heat and outside heat through the fat cells. When you feel ready to land the back knee, then go ahead and then climb up onto your front leg, tone up the tummy. And, the arm raising bit, by the way, is not essential. But what is essential is the feeling, the breath-related feeling of release. So that can be then followed by the arms or not, depending on whether that's appropriate. Or even one arm, it's about the psychophysical. And remember, for it to happen anywhere, it has to happen everywhere. The psychophysical release. For it to happen anywhere, it has to happen everywhere. Well done, gang. Super. Come back down, back to hands and knees. Take a breath there, or 2 or 3 or 4. Perhaps a little wag of the tail. Let's just bring our knees closer to our wrists and turn our hands the other way around to give the wrists a much needed, very useful stretch. And because we're yogis, we move into study, swadhyaya. And study has the purpose of, it wants to continue into Ishvara Pranidhanani. That is, surrender to Ishvara, the best master. Ishvara just means the best master. So the best master is the part of ourselves. It's actually overtly described in Patanjali. Klesha karma vipakasha yera paramishtaha purusha vishesha ishvaraha. Which means unaffected by klesha, karma, vipakasha. That is affliction, karmic, stored stuff, and fruits of action, and general storage of propensity. The highest master is the one who is unaffected by all of those. And not that those don't exist, it's not that there isn't affliction, but we're unaffected. The best master is unaffected. Toes tucked under. We're going to peel the hands nice and gently, one up and then the other, without moving too fast. And place them where they should be, toes tucked under. That might be enough stretch for the plantar fascia, or you might be able to breathe into a little bit more, which could be fingertips, could be hands on the thighs, could be sitting up. Breathing deep, natural, honest. So it's not enough just to do the shapes, you've got to give to them. Okay, out of compassion, I release you. Stretch your legs out in front of you. Take a breath or two. Now we're either going to do Purvottanasana or Setu Bandhasana if that's tricky. So Setu Bandhasana is the bridge formation. Purvottanasana is this stretch of the front of the body. So if you're doing the stretch of the front of the body, fingers point forwards. Otherwise, you're laying on your back now, if this is tricky for some reason. And then we're bending the legs, bring the feet down. Either of the poses, whether you're laying on your back ready to lift the pelvis with your heels close to the buttocks, or whether you're here, as I am, with your hands behind your bum, either of the poses, the tummy draws in and up, and then we lift the bum up in both poses. Doesn't matter which one you're doing. And you go forwards and up, and if you're in Purvottanasana, up and over. If you're in Setu Bandhasana, ranging around to loose, both of the poses you want to loosen your lower back. If your head's tipping back, commit to it. with the chest, like don't sit on the edge. Commit with your chest, and that will actually help your neck tremendously. It will also wake you up, which is what the resistance is about. Don't necessarily want to wake up. Whichever one of the poses you did, come down, cool, calm, collected. We're going to cross our legs, either laying down if you just did Setu Bandhasana, or sitting up if you just did Purvottanasana. Butterfly drawn out and back, and breathing through the nose. And it's about giving right here and now. Giving in the here and now. So any areas that are not giving, that will be revealed through the breath. Your inner thighs are held, so will the breath be when you bring your attention there. Given breath is like a breath that's relief, in a state of relief or release. Change the cross of your legs, whether you're sitting up or laying down. If you're sitting up, draw the buttock flesh out and back. If you're laying down, you might want to tuck the buttock flesh under towards your feet, perhaps using your hands as well. And then breath. Right. Coming out of which of the poses you're in, so you can lay on your side facing towards this side of the room when you're ready. And bending the leg you're laying on, something like 90 degrees. And extending the other leg back so you stretch the psoas, which is the muscle at the top of the inner thigh that stretches from the top of the inner thigh across the lateral pubis and further up into the sides of the spine. Suck your tongue in as best as the recent intake of mince pies will allow, and then lift and turn, and forearms, elbows, forearms and wrists, elbows further forwards than the shoulders. Massage it in to that thoracolumbar fascia. Breathe through your nose if you can. Keep the jaw soft. I think movement can be really useful in terms of working the body further round. So take some deeper breaths, and perhaps every so often you could suck the tummy in and pull forwards from the pubis as you turn a bit further. Obviously great for the thoracolumbar fascia, but also you might feel it around muscles like the tensor fascia lata at the top of the outer thigh, through the iliotibial tract on the outer, further along, continuing along the outer thigh, and so on. Top leg on top of the bottom leg, curl up, just push and come up. Still facing towards, quite frankly, the massive Buddha, plus white Tara, Sita Tara, she's sometimes known as. Extend the inner thigh multiple times, lifting and landing, with the intention to lengthen that muscular area. Then suck in the tum. Push down, lift and turn. Elbows, forearms and wrists. Keep the jaw passive. And work it in. Fluidity of the mind and fluidity of the body are one thing. And when we talk about fluidity of the body, of course, the question might come up, well, what if someone, had a very limited range of motion or even no motion in parts of the body? We're talking about energy flow in the parts of the body where energy flow is possible. So it flows where it can. And if it can flow somewhere and doesn't, then the mind won't flow either. So move in ways that conduce to the breath releasing and accompanying with the breath, the mind. Top leg on top of the bottom leg. Curl up from the side. Oh, good Lord. Yeah, you did it. You did it again. Take a generous stride with your legs and probably sit on a block. The corner of the block facing forwards, just protruding out in front of the pubis. Making sure your legs are equidistant apart and drawing the buttock flesh out back. In yoga, the buttocks are one of the best props. The bigger the buttock, the better. So if you've only got teeny buttocks, you've got Christmas to get working on those. Fingertips on the floor, chest lifted, breathing through the nose, looking for spacious lift. So you've got to find what's tying you up. When I was a kid, I was a very fortunate kid because I had lots of ladybird books. I had quite a lot, actually. I probably had 35 ladybird books. Wonderful. And one of them was Gulliver's Travels. You remember that one? And I remember that there was when he was in Lilliput, the little Lilliputians tied him up, and even his hair was tied up. Little bits of hair was tied up. So I love those illustrations. They're really good. So we're a bit like that. It's like we've got all these different fibers tied up that we have to loosen. So as we move, those ties release. And we breathe easy. So it could be that you're moving in circular ways or side to side ways or forward backwards ways. But it's working if it starts to feel pressure releasing and breath opening up. Sometimes if you stay long enough, and we might not have been here long enough today, but it may be for some of you, that it feels like the spine stays open even with a little bit further forwards, with the fingers a bit further forwards, but that's fine. It's not important. What's important is that we're finding our own ties and releasing them. So it can be confusing when yoga teachers do what I'm doing and sort of go to the place which is right for them in the present moment, and then it's quite easy for other practitioners to think, well, that's better to go further or something, but it isn't. You shouldn't hold yourself back if the body's releasing, but how far it releases, it doesn't matter. It's the release that matters, and the breath release. The release indicates we're merging with the goddess. If it's not happening in the breath, then it's not happening anywhere. Okay. Come up cool and calm, and we better bring the legs out before they never can come out again. And we're going to sit in Siddhasana, or an alternative seated position that's more comfortable for you if Siddhasana is not. Now, Siddhasana is heels aligned with each other and with the midline of the body. There are other variations of the same pose, including putting one leg on top of the other. The heels are still aligned with the midline of the body and with each other if you were to do that variation. Some of the Hatha texts tell us that we should actually sit on our heels to push energy up the central channel, but I don't think it's advisable for most people. And we're going to take 3 rounds for the energy, the Tsalongtrul core practice for the Vyanavayu, the all-over energy. So I'll remind you in a minute, you're going to breathe in and then rebreathe and then rebreathe. It's like Viloma, if you know that practice, breathe. So you're not breathing out. Bit of the in-breath, bit more of the same in-breath, bit more of the same in-breath. Hold the breath at the pelvic floor. So Sahita Antara Kumbhaka. Hold it at the pelvic floor, and then you take the following actions while you're holding it. And then you breathe out at the end of that. So I shortened it a bit and I sped it up a bit, and you can do it at whatever pace suits you. But let's take those a few breaths in to the pelvic floor, and then we'll begin. You breathe out through all the pores of the body. We're going to repeat that twice more, but sit for as long as you need to in between practice rounds. In between practice rounds, we're sitting in the middle point between left and right, good and bad, right and wrong, here and there, you and me, can and can't, success and failure, craving, aversion. As an anchor to keep us anchored over the next few days through the Xmas period. We'll place a hung in the heart. As I say, that will act as an anchor so that all our actions and speech and thoughts come from the center, the non-biased, non-dual center, which is the what we also call emptiness, because it's not taking a position. It's not coloring our experience. This word lesha, which means to color our experience. So we're going to chant Hong. We're going to visualize red light, even the Hong as red light. We're going to imagine that we're planting it like a seed in the heart, and it will stay there. And you'll remember, sometimes you're feeling uncentered over the next few days, you can remember that where's that hung, and you just concentrate on it, and you'll find your center again. And then all speech and action will be coming from openness. You'll be able to act lightly, therefore appropriately. Let's chant that hong together. Take a deep breath in. And a deep breath in and deep breath out like a sigh. You can imagine that hong is bedding in, settling in, radiating with the red light. Hong. Sometimes this is called the Denu Bija because it's what the sound that the mum cow makes to call her babies back to her. What is the mum cow or the mother field? What are her babies? Ideas of self and other. Ideas of separation of body and mind and breath. Ideas of separation of being from environment. These are all our babies that come back home to roost, as it were. We're going to come for our final pose, taken from the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra, corpse pose. So when you're ready, lay yourself down on your back. We are at time, it's exactly 8 o'clock, so hopefully you've got a minute or two. Some of you might already be on your holes, but even if you just do 30 seconds or a minute, it's worth doing. Eyes closed, jaw soft. Hi, how are you? Good. I'm good, thank you. Good. Limbs loose, laying on your back as if you were dead. And I think it's useful to remember what this pose is for. It's one of the 5 Sanketas mentioned in the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra. And the Sanketas, it's mentioned that they are for the practice of Laya Yoga or melting yoga. The root of the word Laya, according to Jim Mallinson, and I'm 100% sure he's right, has roots to do with words like the melting of a glacier. So it's that kind of melting. It's the kind of melting that George Harrison sings about when he sings, "Here Comes the Sun." It's the melting of the winter of separation back into the summer of total expanse. ice returns to water and flows. Wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. And when you feel ready, bend your legs. Take a deep breath, or 2, or 3. Roll onto your side, facing away from the shrine. Both arms coming with you. And then rolling back again to face towards the shrine. Now we have beautiful white Tara. Bring yourself up from their side when you feel ready. Bring your hands to your heart. And we'll affirm our agreement with the following words by saying Om, if we agree. May all be happy, may all be healthy, may all be able to see goodness, and may there be no worry. Om. Thanks so much for coming, gang. This is the penultimate public class of the year. There's one more straight afterwards. If you've got the time, for those of you here in real life, if you paid for this one, you get the second one for free, and that carries on through January. Those who come to the first one get the second one for free. Is my January special offer. Obviously, that doesn't apply to Zoomers because I don't Zoom the next one. Sorry, but happy Christmas, happy New Year, happy everything else. Really wonderful to see you. Thanks so much for coming. And hope to see you over the Crimbo period. Lots of love. Back on the 2nd, I think it's the 2nd.
Thank you, Jim. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Again. Love you.